Hi everyone, welcome to our new channel. In today's lessons we are going to be talking about LoopBack 4. The very first lesson will be just a general overview. We'll go through some of the documentation they have and try to explain what LoopBack 4 is. So, according to official documentation, LoopBack is an open source Node.js framework, TypeScript based, and under the hood uses Express that enables you to quickly create APIs and microservices composed from backend systems such as databases and SOAP or REST services. Now, a quick word check what it really means. So, we know that LoopBack 4 is an open source framework for developing APIs and microservices architectures. Now, what do they mean by the word framework is, in this case, that LoopBack provides us with foundational elements to start our programming. In other words, they have predefined classes, functions, and components that we can use. Another example of framework would be Express, and each of them may have some kind of predefined rules, syntax, and logic that the user has to follow. Now, TypeScript based. TypeScript can be explained as a layer on top of JavaScript. It really means that every JavaScript code is a valid TypeScript code. But TypeScript comes with some additional features like strong typed variables and aspects of object-oriented programming. It provides us with options to declare classes and interfaces, and it actually pays a very big attention into types. Now, create APIs and microservices composed from backend system. What do they mean by microservices? So to explain this, I've produced this very sophisticated diagram. You can imagine that we have a shop as a business domain object, and we can build number of small independent microservices around our shop object. So we could have a payment microservice that will be responsible for processing payments. Then we could have a product list microservice that will be responsible for fetching the products from the database. We could have a shopping cart that will be responsible for adding items into the shopping cart. Now, why this is important is that payment microservice may be using some kind of external, let's say REST API. Now, product may be using some kind of database that it's completely not relevant to the payment microservice. Now, shopping cart may be using some kind of memory database like Redis, which again has nothing to do with our product database or payment gateway API. So, why this is important, you can think of this as if our payment microservice goes down, our users are still able to browse the products and add them to the shopping cart. They cannot pay for them because the payment microservice is down, but our application is still running and have some level of functionality available for our users. So this is really what they mean by building microservices architecture. Composed from backend systems such as databases and SOAP and REST. So if we look at this diagram, we can see that we can declare our endpoint in LoopBack framework, and we can point it to either external services or external databases or external infrastructure, like for example AWS S3 buckets and or Microsoft Blob Storage and so on. So just for an example, you can think that we have in our LoopBack application that we define a post endpoint that will call already existing REST API that has some kind of functionality that we can reuse. So we don't have to code it all over again in our application. We can just point our endpoint to this external service that will do the dirty job. Similarly, we can define an endpoint to get some kind of data from the database. We could do it directly. We could call directly the database, or we could call, some kind of REST service that itself connects to the database. So this is really what they mean by this. It's a great framework. Some of the benefits of using it are described in here. We can define our API endpoints and schemas using Open API standards. So for some people still call it Swagger. It used to be called Swagger. Right now, it's called Open API, and the most recent version of it is version 3.0. So what it means that our operations can be defined using Open API fragments. then they will be during the runtime translated, and you will be able to produce kind of swaggerish UI with the whole description of your API out of the box. They follow, most recent JavaScript, async await modules, syntaxes, and they have a number of other tools that we'll explore in later lessons. So just for the start, really, this is what LoopBack is. It's just a framework that allows you to develop your APIs, and your APIs can be backed by external data sources, and those data sources could be databases, or they could be external REST services, they could be SOAP services, and so on. That's really what it is. One thing to mention is you can still use your JavaScript, you can use Express, you can mount Express application on top of LoopBack, you can use Express middleware in LoopBack as well at the minute. So yeah, see you next time, guys. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.